morning, guys. Yeah, I spoke exclusively with former President Trump after that historic guilty verdict, and he tells me his eyes are still set on November, saying, quote, "We have to think about how something like this could have happened to our country. November 5th will be the most important day in the history of our country. We'll be fighting hard." Judge Merchan set Trump's sentencing for July 11th, which is just 4 days before the RNC convention, where Trump is expected to be formally nominated as the Republican nominee for president. Trump is facing up to 4 years in prison per charge, which could carry a maximum sentence of 136 years. But his attorney, Todd Blanche, says the fight is far from over. Listen.
He wanted to be the one that was actually arguing because he's a smart guy and he knows what he's doing. We made every decision together. You're talking about a man that's been indicted 4 times in 1 year in four different jurisdictions. 4 different jurisdictions. Running for president and winning, and we're going to fight, wake up tomorrow and fight. It's not over. It's not over at all.
And Michael Cohen did not mince words when speaking about the former president and his defense team.
You cannot listen to your client when you are trying to create a defense that is as important as this one is. The very first president of the United States, former president, to ever be charged with a crime, let alone convicted now on 34 counts. It was definitively the stupidest lawyer of all time. Worse than some of the other ones that he has, in his orbit.
Meanwhile, support is pouring in for Trump from Republican lawmakers across the country.
This is what you see in communist countries. This is what I grew up having people in this community tell me about. The only chance they have to win this election is to keep Donald Trump in a courtroom tied up in this case, in that case, and the other case.
People haven't heard from a long time, like saying, how can I get involved? How can I fundraise? What can I do? Because I think they understand when Alvin Bragg looked in the camera tonight and said, I did my job. You know who he was talking to? Joe Biden. He wasn't talking to the American people.
What we saw today was an absolute travesty of justice. This was not law. This was not criminal justice. This was politics. This was a political smear job. This was an attack job. This is what you see in banana republics.
The Biden campaign, on the other hand, is cashing in on this moment. Quote, "There's only one way to keep Donald Trump out of the Oval Office, at the ballot box. Donate to our campaign today." Former President Trump is set to speak this morning at Trump Tower at 11 a.m. He's asking his supporters to join him in his, quote, fight for America.
Hang a man, you better look at him.
Okay. It came in blasting. When you hang a man, you better make sure the job is done. And the backlash is now officially here. Today, Friday, May 31st, 2024, Donald Trump is about to speak in front of Trump Tower. Trump Tower is surrounded by patriots this morning. We're going to cover all of this live and obviously listen to the president live. New donors crash Trump's fundraising sites as Democrats, Silicon Valley tech pioneers and CEOs, and independents flock to supporting Trump because they can't take the communism anymore in this country. Congressman Ronnie Jackson joins the show. My name is Benny Johnson, and this is The Benny Show. Ladies and gentlemen, we had a very, very long live yesterday. We were live for 7.5 hours covering this abomination of justice in this guilty verdict for Donald Trump. A quick question. How did we get here? Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's go through it all, because this is going to be really, really important to remind you where we've come from here. And when somebody says, oh, this is just a jury of Donald Trump's peers doing what the system does and the system worked, I need to remind you what you are actually looking at right now with the Trump case. Donald Trump will be the first felon elected president. He may well run from prison. Many are saying that the judge, Juan Merchan, will sentence Donald Trump to jail. because they can't help themselves. They'll have a psychosexual orgasmic TDS orange man in an orange jumpsuit fantasy realization that they can't get out of their heads. So they'll do it. I'm preparing you right now. How do we get here? How do we get here? When somebody tells you this is just part of the process, this is the process, this is the process playing out the way it should. This is the wheels of justice turning. What Donald Trump was charged with was a bookkeeping error. Some would argue that it's not actually an error because payments to lawyers were classified as payments to lawyers. Donald Trump's bookkeeping error was brought to the DOJ. The DOJ denied to charge. The bookkeeping error case was then brought to the FEC since they said it was a federal elections violation. They declined to charge. The bookkeeping error was brought to the DA's office. The DA's office in New York, Alvin Bragg's predecessor, he denied to charge. Said there's nothing here. The statute of limitations on a bookkeeping error is 2 years in the state of New York. This payment happens in 2017. That was 6 years ago. So the statute of limitations has run out 3 times. Alvin Bragg gets elected with Soros money, and then Alvin Bragg declines to charge. It is only when Matthew Colangelo, the number 3 guy, a dirty, greasy sleazebag at the Biden Department of Justice, decides to leave his cushy pension job for some reason and go work in a dusty, dingy, backwater district attorney's office in Lower Manhattan, which a career move that nobody can make any sense of, and then work exclusively on this case. To do what? To try and upgrade a misdemeanor into a felony. Now, you'll say, Benny, isn't this Manhattan district attorney, isn't this restorative justice where every single felony is actually downgraded? Like the murderers and the people who stab and the people who rape, all those felonies are downgraded in this office? They just let all the people free. Isn't this where Lake and Riley's killer came from? The guy, all the illegal immigrants who beat up the cops, isn't this where they come from? And they're just released back onto the street? Yes, you'd be right. Alvin Bragg's office has downgraded close to 80% of the felonies to misdemeanors. 80% of the felonies that go through Alvin Bragg's office get downgraded. This, as far as we can tell, based on all available reporting, is the first misdemeanor that's been upgraded to a felony in Alvin Bragg's office. So that's how we got here. How did they upgrade that misdemeanor, that statute of limitations had run out, to a felony? Well, they did that through the attempts to prove an underlying greater crime. And what's that greater crime? We don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody's been able to actually pin that down. And that's why in this trial where the judge is a Joe Biden donor and his daughter raises hundreds of millions of dollars for Democrats to put Trump in jail, presumably this is an operation to make the judge's family rich that was plotted out for years. This rigged system and operation was finally brought to fruition yesterday with a guilty verdict of Donald Trump, because the judge said you can literally pick a menu of crimes. You don't even have to specify what crime you think Donald Trump committed. You can just, in your heart, if you think he's a bad guy, you can just say he's guilty of any one of these crimes. It's like a dollar menu at McDonald's. Those don't exist anymore. But either way, you just select state crime, tax statute, federal crime. And that's what they did. They browbeat, confused, and intimidated that jury pool into finding Donald Trump guilty. And those jurors found Trump guilty partially because they're probably confused or they're seething Trump haters because this is a Biden plus 80 district. Probably just seething, rabid Trump haters, or there are people who like think Donald Trump's innocent, but could you imagine what would happen to the one juror who held out and said nothing? Could you imagine what happens to that person? Can you imagine how destroyed their life would be? They would never be able to show their face in public. They'd be doxxed and run through. They'd have to leave their home, their family. They'd probably have to leave the country because of the Marxist left. What they do to that one juror. Imagine the situation that they've been put into. So this is now the situation that we find ourselves in. You woke up today in a different country. This isn't the country that we had when you were born. This isn't the country that we had even a few years ago. This is now a country that locks up presidents not for actual crimes, because in my lifetime, there have been just a few presidents, but there have been 10 wars. There's been unconstitutional spying. There's been the drone strike killing of American citizens without a trial. There have been affairs and payments and payouts and mass murders and the evisceration, the atomization of our Constitution by presidents. But none of them are charged. Donald Trump, of course, not charged with being a Russian asset. Remember that this is what they... Remember that the institutional left told you that Donald Trump was a legitimate Russian intelligence asset and was working for Vladimir Putin. That's not what he was charged with. They said Donald Trump's an insurrectionist. That's not what he was charged with. They said that Donald Trump's a traitor to the country and cheated and stole the election. That's not what he was charged with or found guilty of. Ladies and gentlemen, Donald Trump was found guilty of a bookkeeping record, the statute of limitations completely run out, for an NDA payment. That's it, an NDA payment. That's it. There it is. You find today a different country. So we're now a country that will charge presidential candidates for bookkeeping record violations and send them to jail. If they can do that to Trump, that means they can do it to you. No business is safe. Your business is safe. And no one is safe in states like that. States like New York, California, states where they can get away with stuff like this. You're not safe. And so they shouldn't be safe. This is my major contention this morning. And this is what I wish to, this is my message that I wish to put forward out to you, ladies and gentlemen. Because yesterday we were live for so long and it was really hard to process it in real time because so much was changing so fast. You really have to take a step back and let the weight of the moment hit you. We now live in a different country and I think the left knows it. You don't see a bunch of squeeing and celebration on the left. You actually don't. I thought there would be. I thought like the cringiest, like worst takes. I thought my feed would be filled with them. You don't actually see that. The left has been weirdly quiet because I think they know what's about to happen. They know that the rules have been broken forever. And they broke them. And that this is now going to mean a very different world for them. I think the ones who are at least sober-minded enough to recognize that people like me and people like you are not going to suffer this shit anymore. I think that they realize that they've awoken the sleeping giant. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what I put up on X this morning. And this is going to be the battle plan into the future. Dear elected Republicans, save us your cable news tears and your strongly worded statements. Nobody gives a shit. Your feeble weakness and uselessness is the reason why this is all happening in the first place. Action is all that matters now. Want to save America? Put Joe Biden in prison. Let's start with his family, because you can't actually charge a sitting resident of the White House. Joe Biden and his family committed a bunch of crimes in red states. There are a number of red states that were the victims of the Biden crime family. Florida's a good one. you know that the Biden family, namely Jim Biden, had a Medicaid embezzlement fraud that was run exclusively out of Florida that hurt Florida hospitals and Florida seniors, that like the innocent, old and young people of Florida in this dark ruby red state were victims of the Bidens and their international embezzlement schemes and defrauding of investors. That happened here. There were criminal charges. They all got dropped. Drag Jim Biden, Joe Biden's brother, and the bag man for all these Biden crimes, drag Jim Biden's ass into a Trump plus 50 district now. Make sure the judge, just make sure the judge is somebody who donated to Donald Trump. And ensure that the jury pool all wear MAGA hats. I want to see it. And make Jim Biden sit in a sweaty box in some swamp in Florida and then convict his ass. They committed real crimes in this state. Where the hell are the Republicans doing that? There are Republican district attorneys and a Republican secretary of state in this dark, rock red state. Convict him. And then I want Jim Biden thrown into prison. Joe Biden can't do jack. That's a state charge, pal. Start with the families. Jim Biden spends the rest of his life locked in a swamp box with no air conditioning in the middle of the Everglades in Florida. That's how you begin. What about Texas? Anybody watching from Texas right now? You know that Hunter Biden, part of the large scheme that they were trying to do with the Chinese was to sell Texas natural gas LNG ports to the communist Chinese? That's what the Bidens did. That was the Bidens' business plan to get filthy rich. The CEFC deal, Chinese energy company conglomerate. The goal was to sell American natural gas to China. China doesn't have any gas. And so, why can't Texas charge Hunter Biden for this international scheme to defraud Americans of our natural resources? This seems like a huge deal. Start with Hunter. Open the investigation now in Texas. Now. Bring in Hunter. F these little pithy, you're going to see a Hunter Biden trial like in a few days here. F these pithy little totally rigged federal charges. Do it on a state level. Texas, do it now. That's just off the top of my head. You know that Little Rock is currently and has always been where the Clinton Foundation is headquartered? The Clinton Foundation. You're talking international, pay-for-play, money laundering, embezzlement, child trafficking. You're talking about the most heinously corrupt organization in political history, Clinton Foundation. Start the investigation today. The district attorney in Little Rock is a Trump Republican. Open the investigation today. Bill, Hillary, for the rest of their lives, should be in and out of courtrooms trying to defend or not defend the Clinton Foundation, their crimes, and then be thrown into a hot sweat box prison in Little Rock. The only way for this to end is for Democrats to feel the pain of the system they've broken. If you want to break justice and fairness in this country, then you can be the victims of that. Understand that when you loose the hounds of war, that you're liable to get bit. And that's how this ends. Or that's how it continues on forever. Because the country is now just irreparably broken. Never, ever, ever trust those who are celebrating this moment. Rid them from your friend groups. Understand that they are part of the losing side of history. They are part of the bad, corrupted Marxists do anything for power, destroy the systems. Marxists always use systems to gain power, and then they destroy those systems through the illegitimacy of the process. And that's what's happened here with Trump. And here's the positive side, ladies and gentlemen, as we await the president speaking. Here's the positive side, is that every single founding father in this country was a felon. They don't teach you that in school, did they? That the signing of the Declaration of Independence was a death warrant to everyone who signed it. Put the Declaration of Independence up. This was a death warrant. Every single founding father in America was a felon. Some died in prison. You know this? They don't teach you this in school, do they? Some of the founding fathers died in prison. Some were executed. Some became prisoners of war. And some died penniless because they lost everything. Persecution is the price of being a revolutionary. That it is an abject and total guarantor of revolutionary action against an evil system. Every one of these men signed their felon warrant. Here you go, ladies and gentlemen. This is the felony document. Here's your business falsification of business records document here. Every one of these men signed away their lives. This document that is preserved inside of our National Archives, that sits inside of what is a church. If you've ever been in the National Archives, like a church-like, holy, encased in marble and glass and lights, preciously preserved. This document was a felony document. Here's your falsification of business records. This, ladies and gentlemen, was the felony document of all of our founders. And we view them as what today? Heroes. Heroes of the Republic. Many died penniless. Some were executed. Some were imprisoned. All were felons for signing this document. Persecution is the guarantor of the revolutionary. You will be persecuted by the evil, tyrannical system that you stand against. But in the end, the revolutionaries win and change the world. And the people who were siding with the British Empire during the Revolutionary War, or any revolution, you want to talk Joan of Arc, you want to talk prophets throughout all of biblical history, Gandhi to MLK to Nelson Mandela. All of these people, felons, every one of them, imprisoned, every one of them, changed the world, every single one of them, became iconic, every one of them. And this is what the Democrats have loosed onto this country. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is how we win. This is how we must now address this nation. And you can trust and believe that on this program, we are going to be personally searching out and seeking out attorney generals, calling them onto this show, laying out the crimes that Democrats have committed in their jurisdictions, and asking, where the F are the charges? You weaklings. And you know what? We're going to get results. You're part of a audience here. You're part of a movement here. You're part of a salty army, Benny Brigade. Salt must flow. You're part of something bigger. We're going to change the country. We're going to these people, they cooked a meal, and we're going to force them to eat it. Now's the time. Ladies and gentlemen, Donald Trump's will be speaking soon. I love that. I love that image, Klein. Let's pop that up. That's beautiful. Look at where these felons live. This is the National Archives here. You may recall this from National Treasure when they stole the documents, right? Look at this. Gold, encased in gold, right? inside of like a system. That system is real, actually, where they lower the documents and they're in like a nuclear proof bomb shelter. That's how much we respect our felons in this nation. We're a nation of felons. We're a nation of revolutionaries who stood against evil, tyrannical systems. It's always been that way. You're going to tell me that I can't vote for this felon? F you, man. You're going to make me want to vote. I'm going to crawl through broken glass to vote for him. And that's exactly what we're seeing, actually, right now. Hey, Alex, let's pop up a poll in the chat. Will you vote for Donald Trump from jail? If Donald Trump goes to jail, will that make you vote for him? Will you vote for Donald Trump from prison? Yeah, let us know. Ladies and gentlemen, Donald Trump is speaking right now. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, just a moment. Donald Trump is heading to the podium. We got him live right now. Here we go.
Thank you very much, everybody. This is a case where if they can do this to me, they can do this to anyone. These are bad people. These are, in many cases, I believe, sick people. When you look at our country, what's happening where millions and millions of people are flowing in from all parts of the world, not just South America, from Africa, from Asia, from the Middle East. And they're coming in from jails and prisons, and they're coming in from mental institutions and insane asylums. They're coming in from all over the world into our country. And we have a president and a group of fascists that don't want to do anything about it, because they could right now, today, he could stop it. But he's not. They're destroying our country. Our country is in very bad shape. And they're very much against me saying these things. They want to raise your taxes by 4 times. They want to stop you from having cars with their ridiculous mandates that make it impossible for you to get a car or afford a car. It would make it very possible for China to build all of our cars. It's a very serious problem that we have. We just went through one of many experiences where we had a conflicted judge, highly conflicted. There's never been a more conflicted judge. Now, I'm under a gag order, which nobody's ever been under. No presidential candidate's ever been under a gag order before. I'm under a gag order, nasty gag order, where I've had to pay thousands of dollars in penalties and fines and was threatened with jail. Think of it. I'm the leading candidate. I'm leading Biden by a lot, and I'm leading the Republicans to the point where that's over. So I'm the leading person for president, and I'm under a gag order by a man that can't put 2 sentences together, given by a court, and they are in total conjunction with the White House and the DOJ, just so you understand. This is all done by Biden and his people. Maybe his people more importantly. I don't know if Biden knows too much about it, because I don't know if he knows about anything. But he's nevertheless the president, so we have to use his name. And this is done by Washington, and nobody's ever seen anything like it. So we have a judge who's highly conflicted. You know what the confliction is. Nobody wants to write about it, and I'm not allowed to talk about it. If I do, he said, I get put in jail. So we'll play that game a little bit longer. We won't talk about it, but you're allowed to talk about it. I hope you do, because there's never been anybody so conflicted as this. As far as the trial itself, it was very unfair. We weren't allowed to use our election expert under any circumstances. You saw what happened to some of the witnesses that were on our side. They were literally crucified by this man who looks like an angel, but he's really a devil. He looks so nice and soft. People say, oh, he seems like such a nice man. No, unless you saw him in action. And you saw that with a certain witness that went through hell. And when we wanted to do things, he wouldn't let us do those things. But when the government wanted something, they got everything. They got everything they wanted. It was a rigged trial. We wanted a venue change where we could have a fair trial. We didn't get it. We wanted a judge change. We wanted a judge that wasn't conflicted. And obviously he didn't do that. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We had a DA who is a failed DA. Crime is rampant in New York, violent crime. That's what he's really supposed to be looking at. Crime is rampant in New York. Yesterday in McDonald's, you had a man hitting him up with machetes, a machete. Whoever can imagine even a machete being wielded in a store, in a place where they're eating, and he's going rampant. And Bragg is down watching a trial on what they call crimes. They're falsifying business records. That sounds so bad. To me, it sounds very bad. You know, it's only a misdemeanor, but to me, it sounds so bad. When they say falsifying business, that's a bad thing for me. I've never had that before. I'm falsifying. You know what falsifying business records is? In the first degree. They say falsifying business records. Sounds so good, right? It means that legal expense. I paid a lawyer, totally legal. I paid a lawyer a legal expense. And a bookkeeper, without any knowledge from me, correctly marked it down in the books. A very professional woman, highly respected. She testified. Marked it down in the books as a legal expense. So a legal expense, paid a lawyer, is a legal expense in the books. It's not sheetrock, construction, or any other thing. It's a legal expense. Think of that. This is what the falsification of business records were. And I said, what else are you going to call it? What else are you going to call it? Now, I would have testified. I wanted to testify. The theory is you never testify, because as soon as you testify, anybody, if it were George Washington, don't testify, because they'll get you on something that you said slightly wrong, and then they sue you for perjury. But I didn't care about that. I wanted to. But the judge allowed them to go into everything that I was ever involved in, not this case, everything that I was ever involved in, which is a first. In other words, you could go into every single thing that I ever did. Was he a bad boy here? Was he a bad boy there? And my lawyer said, what do you need to go through? And all you wanted to do is testify simply on this case, because I would have loved to have testified. To this day, I would have liked to have testified. But you would have said something out of whack, like it was a beautiful sunny day and it was actually raining out. And I very much appreciate the big crowd of people outside. That's incredible what's happening. The level of support has been incredible. So the whole thing is legal expense was marked down as legal expense. Think of it. This is the crime that I committed that I'm supposed to go to jail for 187 years for. When you have violent crime all over this city at levels that nobody's ever seen before, where you have businesses leaving, and businesses are leaving because of this, because heads of businesses say, man, we don't want to get involved with that. I could go through the books of any business person in this city, and I could find things that in theory, I guess, let's indict him, let's destroy his life. But I'm out there, and I don't mind being out there, because I'm doing something for this country, and I'm doing something for our Constitution. It's very important, far beyond me. And this can't be allowed to happen to other presidents. It should never be allowed to happen in the future. But this is far beyond me. This is bigger than Trump. This is bigger than me. This is bigger than my presidency. And the people understand it, because I just see a poll just came out, the Daily Mail. That was the first one, came out, was done last night right after the verdict, where I'm up 6 points. 6 points from what we already were. We were leading fairly substantially. We're up 6 points in the Daily Mail poll. Now, maybe other polls come out and it says something differently, but a lot of people have predicted it, because the public understands, and they understand what's going on. This is a scam. There's a rigged trial. It shouldn't have been in that venue. We shouldn't have had that judge. He should have allowed us to have an election expert. We had the best expert, most respected expert, head of the Federal Elections Commission. He was all set to testify. He was waiting for 2 days. And when it was his turn, Bragg's people protested, and the judge knocked him out, said you can't testify. He actually said you can't testify for anything having to do with the trial. You can say what the federal elections is. Well, that doesn't help. Everybody knows that, but you can't testify. So essentially, he wasn't able to testify. Other people weren't able to testify. But with these people, they were able to use people salacious. By the way, and nothing ever happened. There was no anything. Nothing ever happened, and they know it. But they were as salacious as they could be, and it had nothing to do with the case, but it had to do with politics. And do you notice the timing? The timing was perfect. This case was dead. It was dropped by every agency, every governmental board. It was dropped by the highly respected Southern District. They said, no, there's no case here. It was dropped by federal election, and that's what it's about. This is about a federal election, not a state election. You're not even allowed to look at it. They took the state and the city, and they went into a federal election. They're not allowed. The people from federal election, Southern District, and Washington dropped the case. Everybody dropped the case. There was no case. Cy Vance dropped the case. And when Bragg came in, he said, this is the most ridiculous case I've ever seen. And who would have a certain person, again, gag order, who would have a certain person like this ever testify? He said, this is essentially one of the worst people I've ever seen ever to testify. He said, the craziest case I've ever seen. This is Bragg. Then when I announced I was running for president, long time later, they decided to revive this case. And they got a judge, Judge Marchand, who was responsible for another case that was also brought. It destroyed the life of a very good man, by the way. Destroyed the life of a very good man who went to prison once, and then they just put him in prison again because they said he lied. He didn't lie. I looked at the statements he made. In fact, he didn't remember something, and they put him in jail. Again, they've destroyed him. With me for many years, he was an honorable person. He was an honest man. And if you look at what he did, supposedly, it never happened. There's never been anything like this. Over the education of his grandchildren. Over, he didn't report that he had a car or 2 cars on his income. I don't know. I wonder how many people here have cars. I wonder how many people said, oh, gee, I have a car that's worth X dollars. How do you even figure it? And I guess you do have to report it, but I would say probably almost nobody does. Nobody even thinks about it. They put this man, they destroyed this man, but they put him in jail again because they didn't want him to testify. They didn't want him to testify. That's why he went to jail. They put him in jail twice. He's 77 years old. Now, normally I'd say that's an old guy, but I don't feel 77. Nobody ever says that about me. I'd like them to say, gee, we have to have a little sorrow for this man, because they just don't say that about me, but maybe I'm better off that way. I think I'm probably better off that way. But they put him in jail twice. And you have to see what they put him in jail. And he was threatened by the judge. This man was told, you're going to get 15 years in jail if you don't give up Trump. And he was told that. You're going to get 15 years in jail. And he made a plea deal because he didn't want to spend the rest of his life. And he was told that viciously. We're living in a fascist state. He was told that viciously. So you can go to jail for 4 months, 5 months, or you can get 15 years in jail. So do a plea. Almost who wouldn't do that plea? Everyone does those pleas. It's a horrible thing. There's a whole group of lawyers that fight that. It's so unfair. It's so unfair. But they destroyed his life. So many other things. You look at Southern District didn't want to bring the case. Nobody wanted to bring the case. And then you know who didn't want to bring the case? Most of all is Bragg. Bragg didn't want to bring it. But then he brought it. And they tried to make it a different case. They didn't say legal expense equal legal expense. Again, if I wrote down and paid a lawyer. And by the way, this was a highly qualified lawyer. Now, I'm not allowed to use his name because of the gag order. But, you know, he's a sleazebag. Everybody knows that. Took me a while to find out. But he was effective. He did work. But he wasn't a fixer. He was a lawyer. You know, they like to use the word fixer. He wasn't a fixer. He was a lawyer. At the time, he was a fully accredited lawyer. Now, he got into trouble not because of me. He got into trouble because he made outside deals and he had something to do with taxi cabs and medallions and he borrowed money. And that's why he went. And then he pled to three election violations. And as soon as I saw that, I said, I wonder why he did that. He pled. He took a deal. Now, he took a deal because he wanted to get off. In other words, I'll take a plea deal and I want to get off. And he wanted to make a deal with the Southern District. And they wrote the worst report I think I've ever seen on any human being, other than the report that was written on James Comey by the Inspector General, a very great Inspector General, actually. Wrote a report that was so bad. This one was possibly worse. The Southern District, the judge didn't let us use it. He said, it's hearsay. I said, it's not hearsay. Wouldn't let us use it. This is about the man. But he got in trouble for a very simple reason, because he was involved with borrowing a lot of money and he did something with the banks. I don't know if it's defrauded the banks, but something happened. You guys know what it is. And then in addition to that, he gave up on three things where he wasn't guilty. In fact, they were going to testify in that. The head of the FEC, the Brad Smith, the election expert, #1 rated in the country, was going to testify. He took a plea on three things. He just added them in because that gave him more bargaining power with respect to me. But the three things that he pled on, having to do with the election and having to do essentially a little bit with me, they weren't crimes. They weren't crimes. Nor is paying money under an NDA. So we have an NDA, non-disclosure agreement. It's a big deal, a non-disclosure agreement. Totally honorable, totally good, totally accepted. Everybody has them. Every company has non-disclosure agreements. But the press called it slush fund and all sorts of other things. Hush money, hush money. It's not hush money. It's called a non-disclosure agreement. And most of the people in this room have a non-disclosure agreement with their company. It's a disgrace. So it's not hush money. It's a non-disclosure agreement, totally legal, totally common. Everyone has it. And what happened is he signed a non-disclosure agreement with this person, I guess other people, but it's totally honest. You're allowed to make the payment. You don't have to make it. You can make it any way you want. It's a non-disclosure agreement. And he signed that. And there was nothing wrong with signing it. And this should have been a non-case. And everybody said it was a non-case, including Bragg. Bragg said, until I ran for office. And then they saw the polls. I was leading the Republicans. I was leading the Democrats. I was leading everybody. And all of a sudden, they brought it back. It's a very sad thing that's happening in our country. And it's a thing that I'm honored. In a way, I'm honored. It's not that it's pleasant. It's very bad for family. It's very bad for friends and businesses. But I'm honored to be involved in it because somebody has to do it. And I might as well keep going and be the one. But I'm very honored to be involved because we're fighting for our Constitution. The money that was paid legally. There was nothing illegal. In fact, the lawyer in creating the NDA, because at that time he was a fully accredited lawyer. He wasn't a fixer. I never thought of him as a fixer. The media called him a fixer, or the prosecutors called him a fixer. He was a lawyer, and he was fairly good. Later on, I didn't like what he did. I didn't like, for instance, I didn't like that when I became president, he went around and made deals with companies. When I heard that, he was gone. He was gone. And he had payments coming to him. And a lot of this involved things that are very simple. There was nothing wrong. This was standard stuff, all standard stuff. Everything involved was standard. There was no crime here. In fact, I just watched a couple of the reports. You watch Jonathan Turley, Andy McCarthy, Greg Jarrett. You look at all of these people, Mark Levin, all very talented people, great people, many more, many more. And they don't know me, essentially. They don't know me. They're legal scholars and experts. But I look at them. I watched Turley this morning saying, there's no crime here. Everybody says there's no crime here, except for this DA that's got the city out of control with crime. It's absolutely out of control. So we have an NDA that was signed. We have legal expenses. And here's the thing on legal expenses. You have 100 where they say they do a charge. I just recorded this out. Falsification of business records in the first degree. It sounds so bad. I said, wow. And even my own lawyers, I get very upset with them because they don't say what it is. They say, well, falsification of legal records is only a felony. Well, that's a lot. Is only a, they say, a misdemeanor. But they try and bring it up to a felony if there's 2 crimes. They have all these different things. The other thing is they missed the statute of limitations by a lot because this was very old. They could have brought this 7 years ago instead of bringing it right in the middle of the election. So they missed the statute of limitations. They did everything. Now, let me give you the good news. The good news is last night, we just got a report this morning. In the history of politics, I believe, maybe I'm wrong, somebody will find that I'm wrong, maybe, but I don't think so. They raised with small money donors, meaning like $21, $42, $53, $38, a record $39 million in about a 10-hour period. No, think of that. I like those people. Because so far, I guess it's backfiring. Now, I don't know. I'd rather not have it happen. I don't want to have it backfiring. I don't want to win this thing legitimately, not because they were stupid and did things that they shouldn't be doing. They shouldn't have brought this case. They were saying it this morning. This is a case that should not have been brought. I watched Andy McCarthy say this is a case that should not have been brought. And that was this morning. But they all say that. Every legal scholar has said it. And these are great people. They really understand the law. The other thing, a poll just came out. The first poll, I don't know, maybe others will be bad. But a poll just came out a little while ago. The Daily Mail. Does anybody read the Daily Mail? It's very good. They have a good poll. At least I like it today. And the Daily Mail just came out with a poll. And it has Trump up 6 points in the last 12 hours. 6 points. 6 points since this happened. Who thought this could happen? Because the people of our country know it's a hoax. They know it's a hoax. They get it. You know, they're really smart. And it's really something. So we're going to be appealing this scam. We're going to be appealing it on many different things. He wouldn't allow us to have witnesses. He wouldn't allow us to talk. He wouldn't allow us to do anything. The judge was a tyrant. And you got to see that with Bob Costello, a fine man. I've never seen anything like it. And neither has anybody that was in that courthouse where he demanded that the courthouse be cleared. Now, the good news is most of the people in the courthouse were the media. And anybody that was in the media, if you're fair, you'll say, wow. That was anger. That was crazed. He was crazed. And the reason that Bob Costello acted a little bit upset, which I think he has a right to, was that every question he was being asked was being objected to by the other side and sustained by the judge. Sustained. I think he did it many times. I don't know what the number, many times. Even I was sitting there saying, and these were basic questions. And I never saw anybody treated that way by a judge. And I've been treated very badly by 2 other judges also, because it's all the same thing. And it all comes out of the White House. Crooked Joe Biden, the worst president in the history of our country. He's the worst president in the history of our country, the most incompetent, He's the dumbest president we've ever had. He's the dumbest president, most incompetent president, and he's the most dishonest president we've ever had. And so many of he's a Manchurian candidate. You take a look at the way he treats China, Russia, so many others. You know, I ended the Russian pipeline. It was dead. He comes in and he approves it. And he gets 3.5 million, meaning 3.5 million is paid to the family, his family, from the mayor of Moscow's wife. And I said, where did that come from? Nobody wants to talk about it. But he's a very big danger to our country. And the only way they think they can win this election is by doing exactly what they're doing right now, win it in the courts because they can't win it at the ballot box. So we're going to show them that, oh, we're going to fight. It's actually, I don't know, it's something where I'm wired in such a way that a lot of people would have gone away a long time ago. They would have gone away after impeachment hoax #1. That was a total hoax. I had great support from the Republican Party, though. Then you had impeachment hoax #2. And then they formed the committee. How about they formed the committee of thugs, the J6 committee of thugs. And they took their records and they destroyed all of the records after the committee was abandoned because those records were great for us. Now, can you imagine if Republicans did that? Everybody would have been in jail by now. Think of the unselect, I call it the unselect. They call it select committee. I call it the unselect committee of thugs. They meet. It's 100% Democrat and 2 past Republicans that are no longer Republicans, that are no longer in business anymore. Thank you. But it was all Democrats and 2 wayward Republicans. Liz Cheney and crying Adam Kinzinger. He cries every time he goes on television. He's the most emotional human being I think I've ever seen. And that was our representatives. These 2 people were our rep. So they had all this stuff that they're leaking. And then when it came time to look at the records, like where the police said and the Capitol Guard said that I supplied, think of it, that I recommended as many soldiers or National Guard as you want. 10,000. If you had 500, you wouldn't have had a problem. There wouldn't have been a J6, but Nancy Pelosi and the group didn't want it. Anyway, so they have testimony to all of that, that I did not attack the Secret Service agent in the front of a car. You know, these are strong people. And I supposedly went to the driver and I grabbed him around the neck and he rebuffed me. And then I went to the other guy who I think is a black belt in karate, and he's slightly younger than me, maybe 35 years, 40 years, 50 years. And I grabbed him around the neck and said, he's a black belt in karate. They know how to get somebody from around their neck. They would have gone like this, and that would be the end of that. Actually, I had a friend that said, you shouldn't dispute that. That makes you look like the toughest cookie we've ever seen. You should have let that go on. But the fact is, it never happened. It was all made up. And that was proven to be made up. It proved to be a false story. And they deleted and destroyed all of that information, every ounce of it. We're dealing with a corrupt government. We have a corrupt country. Our elections are corrupt. Our borders are open. Our borders are going to be closed very soon. November 5th is going to be the most important day in the history of our country. Now, when I say that, because my people are always saying, do this, because we're fighting for America, DonaldJTrump.com. I hope everybody watching right now, DonaldJTrump.com, because it really makes a difference. They have a lot of money on the other side. I don't know where they get it. Nobody knows where they get it. But for some reason, they get money. But they're not on the side of our country. In many ways, I think they hate our country. Who on earth can want open borders where people are allowed to pour in from countries unknown, from places unknown, from languages that we haven't even heard of? We have people sitting in schools with languages where very few people have ever even heard of these languages. It's not like Spanish or French or Russian. Languages unknown. We have people coming from corners of the globe, and many of them are not good people. Many terrorists, record levels of terrorism, record levels of terrorists have come into our country. Record. They've never seen anything like it. You know, there was a report that in 2019, I don't believe this, by the way, the media gave it, and it was good for me, believe it or not. They said in 2019, there were no terrorists recorded that came into our country. I don't believe that. I don't think that's possible. But they actually, 2019 was a Trump year. I don't believe that that could be possible. But they said no terrorists came into our country. So let's say it was close. Let's say it was close. But now record levels of terrorists, record levels, the highest level we've ever seen of terrorists are pouring into our country. You have China with just in the last few months, 29,000 people came in, and I looked at them on a line, and they look like perfect soldiers. They're almost all male, from 19 to 25. It looks like a recruiting exercise. They have beautiful tents. They have propane stoves. They have cell phones, the best you can buy. I said, what's going on? It looks like they're building an army right in our country. Now, I don't think that would happen, right? We're losing our country. And I really think that this is an event, what took place yesterday with this judge. Look, we have conflicted, but he's a crooked judge, and you'll understand that. And I say that knowing that it's very dangerous for me to say that, and I don't mind, because I'm willing to do whatever I have to do to save our country and to save our Constitution. I don't mind. So thank you. So we will continue the fight. We're going to make America great again. Very simple. When people fight MAGA, they say, we're going to fight. I watch Biden. We're going to fight MAGA. We're going to stop MAGA. It's make America great again. That's all it is. MAGA. Make America great again. Our country's in serious trouble. We owe $36 trillion. We were energy independent for the first time ever. And now we're begging Venezuela for oil. One statistic you have to hear. Venezuela was crime-ridden. Caracas, the cities, crime-ridden. 2 years ago, 3 years ago. They just reported a 72% drop in crime in the last year because all of their criminals, most of them, and the rest are coming in now, the ones that didn't come in. In Venezuela, their prisons have been emptied into the United States. Their criminals and drug dealers have been taken out of the cities and brought into the United States. And that's true with many other countries. The Congo has just released a lot of people from jail. Congo, Africa, just released a lot of people from their prisons and jails and brought them into the United States of America. This is what's happening to our country. And it's not sustainable by anyone. Little things like our kids can't have a Little League game anymore because you have tents and you have migrants living on the fields. That's the least of it. People are taking over our luxury hotels, migrants, and yet our veterans, our great veterans, are living on the streets like dogs. They're living on the streets. But migrants are living in luxury hotels in cities all over our country run by Democrats. So it's my honor to be doing this. It really is. It's a very unpleasant thing, to be honest. But it's a great, great honor. We're gonna do what I have to do. I'm going to do it. And the support has been, that's why I mentioned the number of $39 million. That's why I mentioned we're up 6 points. And we went up a lot over the last month because everybody saw it was a rigged deal. It was a rigged trial. But we're going to make America great again. We're going to make it better than ever before. November 5th, remember, November 5th is the most important day in the history of our country. Thank you very much, everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, Donald Trump. Donald Trump at Trump Tower. making a very strong speech. We have a conflicted judge. He's a crooked judge. And I say that knowing it's very dangerous for me to say that. I don't mind, because I'm willing to do whatever I have to do to save this country and to save our Constitution. I don't mind, says Donald Trump. Donald Trump also noting that they have raised a record amount of cash over the last 6 hours. 6 hours since the guilty verdict. The Trump campaign raised a astronomical amount of money, $35 million in 6 hours. Trump campaign shatters fundraising record after rigged Biden trial. This is backfiring in real time. Jim Jordan now saying that he will be demanding Alvin Bragg and Michael Colangelo appear for a congressional hearing on June 13th. So that would be in 2 weeks. We look forward to that. I'm sure somebody who has, let's pop that up. Here's the actual letter. Strongly worded letters, more strongly worded letters from Republicans. Somebody who has a lot more of a bite than a bark is the great Mike Davis from the Article 3 Project, who joins the program now to respond to Donald Trump and to the last 24 hours. More strongly worded letters from Republicans, Mike. Isn't that great? They've been crying on TV. Cable news, they run to cable news and then they cry and then they send strongly worded letters.
Yeah, I would say this. I don't think that President Biden and his aides and his allies realize how much they have poked the bear with this unprecedented, bogus finding of guilt of President Trump and the subsequent conviction and prison sentence, maybe, likely, that will result from this. I don't think that these Biden Democrats understand how much they have angered, they have enraged the American people. And it's not just Trump supporters. My phone has been blowing up from people who are tired of Trump, who are sick of Trump, even people who do not like Trump. And they are all in now because they are so outraged that they didn't expect this result to happen, even though I've been going on shows like yours, Ben, and warning them for 2 years that this is what these Biden Democrats are going to do. And this was a wake-up call. This was the Pearl Harbor of the lawfare yesterday. And people are outraged, as evidenced by President Trump's campaign getting over $30 million in donations in one evening. I know that the Article 3 Project, the group I run, I have not even done any fundraising off of this, and we are getting inundated with donations. I've never seen anything like this. Tens of thousands of dollars, and we are a lean and mean operation. And I've spent a lot of my own money running this thing, so it's welcomed, but it's stunning. I expected this to backfire spectacularly on President Biden and these Biden Democrats. I didn't think it would be this big of a blast. It's huge.
So all across my social media feeds, there are people saying that they will be voting for Donald Trump. They never wanted to vote for Donald Trump. They don't like Donald Trump. They never voted for Donald Trump before. And now they're voting for Trump to stop Marxism and to stop communism in this country. Now the Trump vote has become a protest vote against a rigged system. And this is the worst possible result. And this is why I think, Mike, you haven't seen the kind of squeeing, psychosexual, orgasmic joy from the left. There's something that's been strangely missing from my timeline, which is what I thought would be the cringe cavalry of people celebrating this. That hasn't, I think there's like a clear-eyed, sober moment right now where Democrats realize, at least the sober ones, realize what they've done here.
Yeah, President Biden and his aides and allies have executed a terrorist attack against our American legal system. And they're like the Hamas people cheering after the terrorist attack. And they don't understand how much they have poked the bear. They are going to get annihilated in this next election. On November 5th, 2024, President Biden is going to get chased out of the White House, and all of his aides and allies are going to get chased out of the White House. And that's when the real reckoning begins on January 20th, 2025. I don't think that President Biden and his people understand how much they have outraged, enraged, red-pilled a lot of these Republicans who are the biggest cowards on the planet, these country club Republican types. These country club Republican types, after Biden's Hiroshima yesterday on the legal system, have parked their Mercedes and they've put away their golf clubs and they've gotten out their Mercedes. I mean, they are. I've never seen so many rich old white men outraged. And there's nothing more dangerous than rich old white men who are angry because they have the resources and they have the ability to actually do something about it. And so all these little woke cupcakes on the other side who do their stuff, they're going to get crushed legally, politically, and financially. We are going to crush you after January 20th, 2025, after what you've done. And it's so much bigger than President Trump. President Trump just said this, and he's spot on. This is so much bigger than Donald Trump. This is so much bigger than one campaign. This is so much bigger than one presidency. They have destroyed our legal system because they are so deranged. Their Trump derangement, they cannot control their Trump derangement. They're like Hamas people who can't control their hatred of Jews. They can't control their Trump derangement. And so they let their Trump derangement lead us to this legal Hiroshima. And they're going to pay a price for this. They're going to pay a price. We already saw with Senator J.D. Vance from Ohio. He's done a criminal referral to the Justice Department. Merrick Garland, that little sniffling punk, won't do anything about it. But guess what? When Trump is back in office on January 20th, 2025, there will be a criminal probe opened on this criminal conspiracy by President Biden, by Merrick Garland, by Jack Smith, by Jay Bratt, by Matthew Colangelo, Tish James, Fannie Willis, Alvin Bragg, Juan Merchan, Lauren Merchan, people on the outside of this lawfare too, like Andrew Weissman and the lawfare crew. You will all be, at a minimum, key fact witnesses that we're going to have to get discovery from in this criminal probe. So save your documents, guys. There is absolutely going to be retribution.
There was a very cringe moment on Fox News yesterday when Alina Habba was calling these the Biden trials, and Shannon Bream of Fox News gave the corporate pablum, producer in her ear, right? Producer from Midtown Manhattan, probably a Biden voter, saying, you can't call them the Biden trials. Well, here, in Alvin Bragg's slobbish, gloating press conference yesterday is Matthew Colangelo. Now, you've been talking about Colangelo for a very long time, Mike, but I've never even seen the guy. Yet here he is, behind Alvin Bragg, little midget of a man, gloating about moving from the number 3 spot at the DOJ to go into this backwater, dingy district attorney's office to run this case. This is the Biden apparatchik who ran this case. Now, you've been calling it out for months, for a year on this program, and here he is sniveling on camera, made sure that he got in the shot to say, I did this. Can you talk to me about Mr. Colangelo? What should a Trump administration do to people like him when they regain power?
We should put them in prison because they are involved in an obvious criminal conspiracy under 18 U.S.C. 241 and 242, very serious federal civil rights felonies, up to 10 years in prison for a criminal conspiracy to violate your constitutional rights. And they have done this, and especially in this New York trial, they illegally, unconstitutionally gagged a criminal defendant so he cannot even point out that the judge is corrupt. This Juan Merchan is corrupt. He illegally donated to Biden. That got him reprimanded. We learned several months ago from the New York court system. That didn't deter Juan Merchan. His daughter is Lauren Merchan. Trump can't say this name. I can. Lauren Merchan is raising millions of dollars. She's a leading Democrat campaign consultant and fundraiser. She's raising millions of dollars off of this unprecedented criminal trial over which her corrupt father is presiding, requiring his recusal under New York statute. How did Juan Merchan respond to the proposed to the motion for the recusal from Trump? he put an illegal, unconstitutional gag order on Trump and said that if Trump even mentioned Lauren Mershon's name, that he goes to jail. If his campaign mentions Lauren Mershon's name, Trump goes to jail. If they even post a news story from even the New York Times mentioning Lauren Mershon's name, Trump goes to jail. Trump, even after this trial, even after the trial is done, the verdict is reached, the witnesses are done, Trump is still under this unconstitutional gag order. You just heard it from Trump at that press conference. He cannot mention Lauren Mershon. He can't respond to Stormy Daniels or Michael Cohen. He can't talk about Matthew Colangelo getting deployed from the number 3 office in the Biden Justice Department. Trump couldn't even mention that the jury pool voted 87% for Joe Biden. Somehow that would get Trump thrown in prison, let alone the fact that Colangelo, Bragg, and Judge Mershon rigged the jury selection process to bounce potential Trump social media followers, but not Biden. This was a rigged process from the beginning. Soros-funded Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg, Fat Alvin, campaigned on the fact that he was going to get Trump. Colangelo got sent from the Biden Justice Department after the prior Manhattan DA, the Manhattan U.S. Attorney, the Federal Election Commission, and Bragg himself, who campaigned on getting Trump, knew that this case was a dog and didn't bring it. But Colangelo brought it. I mean, there is going to be serious legal, political, and financial consequences come January 20th, 2025. In the meantime, Jim Jordan needs to issue subpoenas for documents and witnesses immediately, not letters, subpoenas, and then enforce those subpoenas. And if the Biden Justice Department doesn't want to enforce those subpoenas, I guarantee you the Trump 47 Justice Department will.
So considering the fact that you would be a very strong advisor to that department and that you'd be somebody that presumably may even work in that department, it's a promise that we certainly hope you intend on keeping, Mike, and we know you to be a man of your word. So speaking of this case and what it means for the overall legal system now across the country, I'd like to ask your opinion on something that I've been thinking about and that I can't get out of my head, which is the crimes that the Bidens have committed in red states. So I know that a sitting resident of the White House can't be charged, and you can't sue Joe Biden, okay? And you can't do that while he's in office. But Joe Biden's brother, a real scumbag named Jim Biden, had an entire Medicaid embezzlement scheme in the state of Florida. Yeah, the DOJ actually looked into this. He defrauded all of his investors. He defrauded the good people of Florida. He stole state funds. And he sent a bunch of little grandmothers out onto the street after closing their hospitals and treatment centers. He committed a real crime in the state of Florida. My contention, I'm no lawyer, is that immediately this Florida Attorney General or a DA here in this state should charge Jim Biden, drag him into a swamp courthouse with a Trump-donating judge, with a jury pool with people wearing MAGA hats, and should throw Jim Biden's ass in jail for the next 100 years in a non-air-conditioned cell in the Everglades because of the crimes that they committed in this red state. And you can go to Texas, you can go to Arkansas, and you can find a lot of red states where Democrats have committed crimes. Do you agree with this tactic?
100% agree with you, Ben. And I'll tell you, Chris Carr, the Attorney General of Georgia, and Ashley Moody, the Attorney General of Florida, they need to open criminal probes right now because this criminal conspiracy driven by Biden and his aides and allies had key overt acts committed in Florida with the Mar-a-Lago raid and the subsequent criminal case against Trump in Florida, along with Fani Willis's case, Nathan Wade and Fani Willis's case in Georgia. And I understand that Governor Kemp hates Trump and he's not going to do anything. He's not going to lift a finger to help Trump. But Chris Carr, what is he doing? Why isn't Chris Carr opening a criminal probe on Fani Willis and this broader criminal conspiracy to violate President Trump's civil rights? Why isn't he bringing a RICO prosecution against President Biden and these Biden Democrats for their election interference, just like Big Fanny and Nathan Wade are doing in Georgia? Why hasn't Ashley Moody opened a criminal probe in Florida? I just talked to Axios about this today, and they published a story, and of course, the left's heads are exploding, and that's good. That means that we're over the target, Ben. And that Ashley Moody and Chris Carr, if you want a future in the Trump Republican Party, because it is the Trump Republican Party, no matter what your governors think, it's the Trump Republican Party. If you want a future in this party, you guys need to step up and do your jobs.
I just want to move just really quickly outside into the blast radius of what they've done here. The Clinton Foundation has always, and this was a shock to me, always been located in Little Rock. The district attorney in Little Rock is a Trump Republican. The governor is Sarah Sanders. The Clinton Foundation is like a child trafficking, embezzlement, pay-for-play international slush fund for Bill and Hillary. Where are the charges, Mike?
That's a great question. I didn't even think about that. Tim Griffin is my former boss and a good friend. I used to work with him in the Bush 43 White House. He was a member of Congress, and now he's the Attorney General. So I would say, Tim, this is a very good point that Ben Johnson is making. I do think that Tim Griffin, who wants to run for governor someday, should open a criminal probe on the Clinton Foundation. I that's brilliant, Ben. I'm glad we're talking about this. And Tim Griffin, I think that this is a very good idea that Ben has brought up here.
I thought that the Clinton Foundation was run out of Manhattan or something, and we couldn't get at them. No, dude, it's been Little Rock based the entire time. All their offices, they own like an entire office park in Little Rock.
Well, isn't the presidential library is down there, right? They have that trailer park that's the presidential library.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
maybe it's part of that. Tim Griffin, I think, buddy, you need to get on this one. Get on it. Get her done, as you like to say.
Okay, well, hey, I'll be happy to take a residency at the Article 3 project for my brilliant legal analysis here.
You're a visiting fellow, Ben.
Okay, really quickly, Mike. I know the audience really loves you and has been listening to you and your sound, clear-eyed legal advice for a very long time on this program, and you've never led them astray. And I'd like to give you an opportunity here to perhaps uplift some people that may have been demoralized by what happened yesterday. Since you are the person, and hopefully you know this if you're watching, but let me just reiterate, the man on your screen right now is the reason Donald Trump has Supreme Court justices. He's the reason that Brett Kavanaugh was able to get through confirmation. Mike Davis personally was the one shadow boxing against the evil that was thrown at Kavanaugh in that hearing. You've never seen anything like it. We tend to forget because it happened a few years ago, but there's nothing more duplicitous or disgusting than what they did to Brett Kavanaugh. And Mike Davis was the single man standing in the gap, saving those nominations and fighting back. And so when Mike Davis comments on strategy and what we should do going forward, know that he's a man who comes from like actual experience. And so, Mike, the floor is yours. What should the faithful who like still believe in America be taken away from this moment?
I appreciate that. I have to do this quickly because I have to bounce, but I would say this, Ben, to your listeners, to your followers, there will be retribution, and there will be retribution after the American people put President Trump back in the White House on November 5th, 2024, and the Trump 47 Justice Department is up and running on January 20th, 2025. There will be severe political, financial, and legal consequences to President Biden, Merrick Garland, and these Biden Democrats. That there has to be, because the only way this stops is if they feel if they feel the consequences.
I'm gonna make Reign of Terror 2-week Reign of Terror 2025 shirts just for you, Mike. And
3 week, Ben. 3 week.
3 week. Here's the Article 3 project, ladies and gentlemen. Go and support Mike. Mike says they're getting flooded. Help the flood, ladies. Flood. Tears, the streets of D.C. must be filled with tears. Mike Davis is one of those guys making sure that it is. Godspeed, Mike.
Thank you, Ben.
All right. We'll just say we'll take the extra 5 seconds with Mike. All right. That's going to be an all-timer for me, having Mike Davis say, wow, maybe this audience has cracked the case on charging the Clintons. Maybe this audience, maybe you and me together today, Tim Griffin, Little Rock, we're going to come knocking on your door. Hey, why haven't you charged the Clintons yet exactly? Can you explain that? Mike Davis is the man to probably make that happen. And so we look forward to seeing what comes of that. You are a part of a very strong and powerful audience. And I want to show you that you are also part of a growing movement. This is really important. And I because it's times like this where the Marxists will try to demoralize you and make you think that you're alone. And that anger that you feel is just felt by you, and that weight and that hopelessness, that then anger, if nothing happens, will be turned into hopelessness. And that's not the case. Okay? I'm just going to do a real quick breakdown of some of the most positive news that you will get all day. All right? Here we go. There are probably millions of new Trump voters today that did not exist yesterday. And I can prove it. If you know where to look, you can find on X hundreds of thousands of posts from Democrats and independents saying they're now voting Trump. I'm voting Trump. I don't even like him. I'm just tired of the left, tired of DEI and gun laws, tax hikes, climate nonsense, billions to foreigners. I'm not voting for the man. I'm voting for the pissed off bull in a China shop who wants to burn DC to the ground. Does that sound like you? Does that sound like you? This guy's some tech CEO. This is probably the first Republican he's ever voted for. I'm a registered Democrat. Read this with me. I'm a registered Democrat from New York. I have never donated to a political campaign before. I just donated to Donald Trump because our justice system is rotten to the core. I suggest you do the same. This is remarkable. I'm an RFK guy. I can't believe I'm saying this. I just donated to Trump. I can't take it anymore. These freaks are destroying our country. You are not alone. Holy crap. I've had dozens of calls, over 30 voicemails, hundreds of text messages so far, 7 calls from Democrats, Silicon Valley days, that say they're voting Trump. One just donated 50 grand. This, Destiny, this is a guy that we've debated before on TV. This guy is like considered like the liberal YouTuber, like sort of zeitgeist guy. Okay, he goes on and debates. Maybe you know who this Destiny guy is, but he gets big bookings, okay, and he has a big voice in the liberal movement, a big young voice in the digital liberal movement. So let me set this up for you. This guy's probably the fastest growing liberal commentator that exists on the left. The Trump convictions are BS. He's being treated worse than any candidate in history. Patriotic Americans need to realize that the system is working against us, not for us. What? I was planning to vote third party, but I'll vote Trump just to spite the Democrats. Fine, I guess I'm MAGA now. Look at these people. I had no intention of voting for Trump until y'all started this S. Done. I don't love Trump, but the left just pushed me into his camp. What a joke. University of Chicago professor donates to Donald Trump campaign after the legal abomination. Well, Democrats, congratulations. I didn't start out a Trump fan. I supported Rand Paul, says Nick Fritas. I was skeptical of whether or not Trump could do what he said. Even after supporting him in 2020, I was frustrated by some of his policies. But now I will enthusiastically campaign, donate, and vote for Trump. Because if nothing else, he represents an opposition to you, the people who will engage in lawfare and openly target your political rivals while ignoring the real issues facing this country. You have showed us the rules of the game. Do not be surprised when we start playing with them. Trump 2024, says Nick Merckx to his 2 million fans. Incredible. I was undecided, but today's events have convinced me I am voting for Trump. Here are the Google search trends. How to donate to Biden is blue. How to donate to Trump is red. What's that? Well, this is when the verdict was reached, and then this is the result. I want to remind you that Joe Biden raised $40 million last month, and that the Trump campaign just announced that they raised essentially that in 6 hours. I will, and I want to know in the chat, let me know in the chat. I will crawl through broken, flaming glass on my bloody elbows and knees to pull that lever for Trump in 2024. Do you feel me? Do you agree? Do you feel that? I feel that, ladies and gentlemen. Do you feel, are you the same? Are we the same here? I could go on. I could show you so many, this independent is voting for Trump. Never voted for Trump before. What a disgusting trial. Kiss my ass, communists. All right, one more thing, ladies and gentlemen. One more thing. This is what Trump Tower looks like right now. This is what the scene is outside of Trump Tower. One more thing. One more thing. Eric Trump saying that May 30th, 2024 was the day that Donald Trump won the presidential election. I totally agree. You're not seeing the celebrating and the squeeing from the left because they know what they've done. Eli Honig is the CNN legal correspondent. This guy worked for Alvin Bragg. Do you know this? This guy worked for Alvin Bragg. Now, we've played some of his clips before. But this blew my mind this morning. Eli Honig, CNN legal commentator, he's on TV all the time, worked for Alvin Bragg in the DA's office. Just wrote a absolute scorched earth immolation of this trial. He just ripped the spine out of this trial. Said our justice system's dead. This overreach has just killed the system of justice in this country. Democrats have no idea what they've just done. Listen to this just really quickly. This from Alvin Bragg's former employee, CNN on-air commentator. Most importantly, the DA's charges against Trump push the outer boundaries of law and due process. It's not the jury. It's on the prosecutors who chose to bring the case and the judge who let them play it out. The district attorney's press office and its flacks proclaim the falsification of business records are commonplace, and indeed, the office's bread and butter. That's only true if you draw definitional lines broad as to render them meaningless. Of course, the DA charges falsification quite frequently. Virtually any fraud cases involve some sort of fake documentation. But when you impose meaningful search parameters, the truth emerges. The charges against Trump are obscure and nearly entirely unprecedented. In fact, no state prosecutor in New York or Wyoming or anywhere has ever charged federal election law as a direct predicate to state crimes against anyone for anything, none ever. Putting aside the specifics of election law and Manhattan DA itself, almost never brings any case which falsification of business records is the only charge. They've lost all, they're like losing their friends in this. Okay. So MAGA has grown millions bigger. America First has grown millions bigger. And Joe Biden is losing CNN. At least there's cracks in the facade. So ask yourself, is the backfire here? The answer to that is unequivocally yes. Also, the terrifying prospect of retribution. What will we do to the Clinton Foundation, to the Biden family members who committed crimes throughout this country, who strip mined this nation, ripped the brass off the Titanic, and sold it to our enemies, as they have done? They view this place as a honeypot to loot from, and they view you as a slave. You are a slave to be beaten and to be abused, and you're not allowed to fight back. And it is only when you decide, and when we decide collectively as a movement, that we are going to implement the exact same pain upon them that they have implemented upon our candidates, children, families, social structure, that this ends. And that pain needs to be severe. It needs to be brutal. And it needs to happen quickly. There needs to be a reaction to this. There are many, many positive reactions that we've shown you You can see the fundraising numbers. Historic. Expect Donald Trump to make $100 million this month. Donald Trump has a Silicon Valley fundraiser that's happening. Some of the richest people in Silicon Valley in like a week. Some people that are our friends. David Sachs, he's been on the show. Expect Donald Trump to raise hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't know. Elon Musk, could Elon Musk just come in and give like $10 billion to Trump and just be like done with it? Yeah, I mean, totally. It's not outside the realm of possibility. In fact, Elon Musk is speaking with Trump regularly about positions in his cabinet. Did you know this? This was reported out this week. So the backlash is here. The backfire is already happening. It hasn't even been 24 hours. And the messaging now is crystal clear. There is an ad that the Trump campaign released after the verdict, and it's called The Final Battle. It's chilling. You're going to love it. Here we go.
Final battle. With you at my side, we will demolish the deep state. We will expel the warmongers from our government. We will drive out the globalists. We will cast out the communists, Marxists, and fascists. We will throw off the sick political class that hates our country. We will rout the fake news media, and we will liberate America from these villains once and for all.
Come on. You couldn't ask for anything better if you were like a Hollywood screenwriter. It's perfect. The Trump campaign, I think, knew what was going to happen with this jury and with this rigged trial. That's why during the trial, they released this ad, which effectively like set the table for what was about to happen. The man in the arena. Here we go.
Lower the lights down, hand over my crown, hand over my heart.
Prepare, ladies and gentlemen. We are about to enter an election cycle unlike any other. And I hate that these words are about to leave my mouth. Because there's one thing we don't do on this program, a lot of things we don't do on this program, but I don't do canned commentary. You know? Like you don't do like Trump is a threat to democracy. Like we don't do canned commentary. We follow a lot of different channels and a lot of different news stations, and they get all these people get talking points. They never have original ideas. We never reiterate those talking points. We just can't. Safe and effective. Like, you know, you just don't. That's not us. We will never ever do that. So I'm loath to say something that I know is a slogan, but it's true. This is the most important election of your lifetime. It is. It just is. There's never been an existential threat like this in America, not since, I guess, during like major revolutionary and or Civil War time. But this is it. This is it. In our generation, this is it. We've never seen anything like this in 100 years or more in this country. This is the most important election. A vote for Trump. You don't have to like Trump. You don't have to like his tweets or his truth socials. You don't have to even like the man. You don't have to care about Stormy Daniels or payments. This is it's totally irrelevant. All of it's irrelevant. The question is, do you want to live in a free country? Do you want to live in a country that our State Department would authorize a coup against? If this were happening anywhere else, our State Department would be actively running a coup against the leadership of this nation. If America were Gambia or Romania and we were locking up our political opponents in sham show trials. Here we go. Good. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. We had a small technical glitch with the microphone there. My apologies. Our State Department would be authorizing a coup against a country that did what we just did to Donald Trump, what Democrats just did to Donald Trump. You know it to be true. Our State Department would sanction it, and then our CIA would run a soft coup or hard coup against the government that did this. This is the America that you find yourself in this morning. You can be the soft coup. You can be the regime change. This is your chance. This is your shot. I find this one thing particularly comforting, which is we started off with the founding documents, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, Article 2, the executive. Article 2 of the Constitution talks about the awesome power that is vested upon the President of the United States and how no court and no people and no one is allowed to restrict that power or that travel or that awesome responsibility that man absorbs when they become president. No judge, no sniveling jackass can restrict or contain the presidency. It's why you can't sue the president. You can't sue the president, right? Like, you can't do it. These are not allowed. Judges can't rule against the president, right? Not while you're in office. They've now changed the rules when you're out of office. So the number one way, if you don't like these charges, if you think these charges are garbage, as we do, the number one way to actually fix them and to throw these shackles off is to just elect Donald Trump president. Now, if you're watching the show, maybe you were planning on doing that anyway, but you should plan on doing that harder now. Elect Trump president. Trump becomes president, he can't be in a courtroom. He can't be in a jail cell. He can't have an ankle monitor. The president immediately has rights to view all American secrets, go anywhere he wants in America, on any military base, know everything and anything. It is actually his obligation constitutionally to know all these things for the function of the country. So if you don't want this to happen to Trump, if you don't like what's happening to Donald Trump, if you wish to liberate Trump, you can. I encourage you to donate. But really what I encourage you to do is vote and make sure every person in your family and all your friends, everyone on your block, votes for Trump. This is actually how you liberate Trump. Because what would the alternative be? That Juan Merchan is more powerful than the president? No, that's not how the Constitution works, jackass. So make Trump president. Got an election in 5 months. Make Trump president, and this all evaporates. Not only that, as we talked with Mike Davis, we were able to get our retribution. We're going to be able to force this down their throats and ensure that this never happens again to anyone, because it shouldn't. But first, there must be pain. First, we've got to lock up Jim Biden. Sorry, Joe, your brother has got to go. You got to lock him up. Got to lock him up. You can go visit him during, Christmas Eve. There's visiting hours in the Everglades, non-air-conditioned, mosquito-laden jail cell that Jim Biden will be spending the rest of his miserable days in. Sorry, Joe. You can visit him there. That's what needs to happen first. And then, once that happens, and once that table has been reset and rebalanced, then you get saving this country. And that's what we're going to do. Ladies and gentlemen, we have some quick takeaways from yesterday that I think is worth getting to. Alina Habba, friend of the show, on the show all the time, love Alina Habba. We knew she'd be fire after this sentence, but we weren't expecting this. Here we go, Alina.
If we don't stop this now, we are done. And I don't mean now, I mean right now, as in yesterday. Judge Merchan today watched my client. I watched him. I watched the jury say guilty 34 times, and I watched him. And he looked at my client, and he covered his mouth. And he covered his mouth probably because he was smiling. Let's be very clear. This judge has Bannon, Weisselberg, and no shock to me, Trump. And he is 100% a man that should have recused himself. But our justice system is so broken right now, Sean. And I want to also remind the American people of one thing. I am a legal spokesperson. I am also an American. And I will be voting for Trump, not because of President Trump, who I obviously support, but because I support America. And so does he. Our country is currently in a serious state. And we cannot look at this as anything other than a serious state of affairs where we have an issue where people are using politics in the legal courtroom. It cannot happen anymore. I have seen it. I have been in court since October, trial after trial after trial. For 15 years, I have been practicing law. I have never seen anything like this in my life. And that judge intentionally wouldn't even allow in pretrial proceedings that the court will not report, they would not allow us to bring up that President Trump didn't even take deductions. He didn't do anything wrong. His CFO, him, the Trump organization, the family, nothing. But that evidence was kept away from the jury, and it is intentional. This is not America. And I'm speaking to MSNBC viewers and CNN viewers, the Rachel Maddows, the Caitlin Collins. It is time to come together because this administration does not care about us. They do not. They care about themselves.
We love Alina Habba. She's such a strong spokesperson. The other person who's done an incredible job in this case is Todd Blanche, who is the attorney for Donald Trump. And Todd Blanche has said, does not do press interviews, but he went on TV last night saying that Donald Trump's constitutional and civil rights have been totally violated and that he's going to bring this, they're willing to bring this to the Supreme Court. They'll bring it all the way to the Supreme Court, which of course would have jurisdiction over a federal election, right? So consider this, the man is running for federal election. Todd Blanche saying Donald Trump's rights have been egregiously violated. Watch.
You believe Donald Trump's constitutional rights were violated?
In many ways, yes.
How so?
Well, if you look at, for example, the gag order that was put in place, and you had a situation where President Trump, who's on the campaign trail and is trying to compete with voices that are saying things every day that he cannot respond to without the risk of being fined, which he was, or going to prison for violating it. That affects not only President Trump, that affects every voter, whether they're going to vote for President Trump or against President Trump. That affects every single voter in this country because they don't get to hear from the candidate. We very much disagree with that order. We appealed that as well. There was a lot about what happened over the past year that, I sit here tonight, the verdict just came down today, but really there's a lot that's happened over the past year that I think that Americans should look very hard at.
I think they are, Todd. I'd love to have Todd Blanche on this show. Let's try and book him next week. That'd be fantastic. We would love to speak with Trump's attorney in this trial. Now, there's somebody who has been a defender of Donald Trump, even though he ran against him for president in 2016. Somebody that I know was deeply considered to be the finalist for Donald Trump's attorney general, and we would have a very different country if Donald Trump had chosen Ted Cruz as attorney general. I have a feeling that a second Trump term, Ted Cruz would be the man who would be the attorney general, and I have that on good authority. Ted Cruz last night fired up.
What we saw today was an absolute travesty of justice. This was not law. This was not criminal justice. This was politics. This was a political smear job. This was an attack job. This is what you see in banana republics. And it is, I am both furious and heartbroken at the same time. I'm furious at what we saw, but I'm also heartbroken for the rule of law. I'm heartbroken for our justice system. Last night I was on with you and I suggested maybe there was hope for the jury. Maybe one juror would hold out. And I got to say, you shook your head and said, no, New York is too far gone. I'm sorry to say, Sean, you were right. There was not 1 out of 12 who stood up and said, this is garbage. This is election interference. These are lies. This is a kangaroo court. We didn't have a single juror that said that. Now, you look at the rulings from this judge, this partisan judge. They were so biased. I'm going to tell you right now, the chances that this decision is overturned on appeal, I believe, are 100.0. This will be overturned. And by the way, the judge knows it will be overturned. And that's the whole point. He doesn't care. The objective today was to get the 2 words that we saw the Biden White House say in their press release today: convicted felon. Between now and November, the Democrats and the corporate media will use the words convicted felon about 1 billion times. This is all about politics and influencing the election, and it is a disgrace.
I think that there has never been a more important moment to deeply consider who the best vice president would be for Donald Trump. I think that the vice presidential selection has actually risen exponentially in its importance, because you're going to need somebody who's going to be able to fight dirty, who's going to be able to really throw elbows and to bite in a fight. Now, many have talked about Vivek Ramaswamy, Tucker Carlson as running mates. I'm for that. J.D. Vance, Byron Donalds, awesome. So one of the names that's always on top of the list is Marco Rubio. The only real vote for Marco Rubio here would be that his family escaped communist Cuba. And so many people who are here in this country are here because their parents fled oppression. You probably are among them. Are you watching this right now? Your parents or grandparents or great-grandparents or you fled despotism somewhere. The same despotism that's happening to Donald Trump right now. Marco Rubio speaking to that yesterday, already sort of bricking out those talking points. Many saying that Marco Rubio is the front runner for Donald Trump's vice president. I certainly am making no endorsements. However, that is what the conventional wisdom says and what many behind the scenes are saying. So let's have a listen to what Marco has to say.
In this particular case, they found themselves a Democrat lawyer. This is a guy who gave money to Joe Biden in 2020. This lawyer, a Democrat judge. This judge gave money to Joe Biden in 2020. His daughter is a campaign consultant for Democrats who's actually out there marketing convict Trump stuff. Okay. Then you've got a DA who basically said, I am going to go after Trump and put him away when he was running for office to get elected. He didn't know what he was going to put him away for, but he promised to put him away for something. Then you have a jury. We don't know who they are, but I know this. They live in Manhattan, which voted 85% for Joe Biden. And so you put all, and then what did they charge him with? Donald Trump signed checks, and when they labeled the checks, they payments to his lawyer, who, by the way, is a serial liar and the key witness in this case, he put legal expenses. And that is what they convicted him on. But that's not the goal here. The goal here is to keep him tied up in court. You think this judge sets that day 3 days before the convention as a coincidence? He knows exactly what day he set, and he knew exactly why he was doing it. This is the most outrageous travesty I've ever seen. And the problem here is Democrats have crossed this line. They have crossed the line in which now the court system is a political weapon. And it's going to be very hard for it not to come back the other way. I don't want that. I heard you saying that earlier in the show. But I think we need to understand that they've crossed the line now and let a genie out of a bottle. It's going to be hard to put back in place.
Good. I know some in the audience and some in the chat don't like Marco Rubio, and that I'm not going to sit here and argue with you. I'm just here to deliver the conventional wisdom and what we hear behind the scenes, which is that Marco is a very a prime leading candidate. And if he's to make himself extremely useful to Trump, well, then just go back a single generation, Marco, to your parents who fled Cuba for this exact thing. I think he'd be strong on that point. Well, Benny, you've just shown me a bunch of Republicans standing up for Donald Trump. Maybe they're just saying things. Maybe they're just saying it because they're paid to say it or because they wish for some type of plum political position. And to that, I would give you a Democrat Congresswoman who voted, Democrat Congresswoman who ran for president against Donald Trump in 2020, Tulsi Gabbard, absolutely eviscerating the destruction of the rule of law. Here we go.
Yeah, so much for the rule of law, Jesse. I think this is adding insult to injury to the seriousness of what the Biden-Harris administration, the Democrat elite, are doing to destroy our country, to destroy our democracy, to undermine the rule of law. And my hope is that the people who are watching this, the American people who are watching this, are understanding that this is a very serious wake-up call, that the consequences of this extend far beyond this case, this verdict, even Donald Trump. President Biden is guilty of turning our country into a banana republic. What does that mean for you and me and every American? That means we have to now think twice before challenging or opposing or criticizing the political party that's in power without being concerned about how they may now use the levers of the Department of Justice and law enforcement to then come after us. That's the serious issue that's at stake here. And the only way that we save our democracy and reverse the damage that's already been done is when every single one of us as Americans, Democrats, Republicans, independents, libertarians, we take it upon ourselves to choose freedom, to save our country, save our democracy, and punish President Biden and his administration, those who are abusing their power on November 5th, and vote for Donald Trump.
We just did an interview with Tulsi Gabbard where she illuminated some of the horrors of Hillary Clinton, what it's like to run for president against Hillary Clinton, to be on the wrong side of the Clinton regime. There would be so many people in favor of prosecuting Hillary Clinton. Donald Trump promised to do it. I think it's time to make good on that promise. The rules have changed. Donald Trump didn't prosecute Hillary Clinton, according to him, because he thought it'd be bad for the country. But the rules have changed. We didn't make the rules. We didn't break the rules. We sure as hell can end it all. We sure as hell can use those rules against our enemies. Tulsi Gabbard would probably be a star witness in what it would look like to bring a character witness against Hillary Clinton. I mean, it's amazing, that woman's stories of what happened to her the moment she spoke out against Hillary. So there's Tulsi Gabbard. Got it. She's defending Trump on this. But Benny, once again, you've just shown me, like, you know, Fox News Tulsi, and you've shown me a bunch of Republicans. Is there anything else? Well, yeah, okay. How about somebody who's running against Donald Trump right now, defending Donald Trump? How about a guy named RFK Jr., who is actively running against Donald Trump for president right now? What does he have to say about this? What does he believe about this? Presumably this might help him, right? Some kind of fever dream haze, unconnected to reality, but like maybe you'd have an advisor say, oh, this will help you. Maybe you'll get more points in the election. Yeah. RFK, take it away.
I think, Jesse, that it is going to backfire. This conviction is going to backfire on the Democrats. I think every time that President Trump has been indicted, that his approval ratings actually increase, his popularity increases. I think there's a large number of Americans who are going to see this as the politicization of and the weaponization of the enforcement agencies. And I think it's going to hurt. It's bad for our democracy. I think the Democrats feel like they have, the DNC feels like it has a candidate that cannot win fair and square in the polls. And so they have to win in the courts. They have to win by clearing the deck and getting their other opponents out of the race.
Yeah. So this is going to backfire, says RFK Jr. Trump's going to go up in the polls. He's going to go up in fundraising, and all of that is being proven right. Final commentary from yesterday, because she's a friend of the show and because she's the official spokesperson for Donald Trump, is Caroline Leavitt, who says a vote for Donald Trump is it's bigger than anything else right now. It's bigger than the man. It's bigger than what you care or think about Donald Trump. A vote for Donald Trump is a vote against these Marxist animals who are here to burn this place to ashes so they can rule over the ashes. Caroline, take it away.
This trial has been rigged from the beginning, and it has been concocted by Joe Biden and the corrupt Democrat Party. This case was brought by a far-left, deranged Democrat prosecutor, Alvin Bragg. It was overseen by a leftist Democrat judge who is highly conflicted and should have recused himself. And they brought it here in Manhattan, a Democrat jurisdiction that they know voted for Joe Biden 80-20 in the last election. And if they can do this to President Trump, they can do it to anyone. So Americans out there, if you want to stop this weaponization of our justice system, if you do not want 4 more years of this dictator, this true threat to our democracy, Joe Biden, in the White House, then you have to vote for President Trump on November the 5th. He says it all the time. November the 5th will go down as the most important day in our nation's history. And that is ultimately where he will be vindicated and he will win. But we need all hands on deck. And yes, Joe Biden shamefully is fundraising off of the political persecution of his opponent. That tells you everything you need to know about this current regime that is in power. So go to DonaldJTrump.com, support President Trump, stand on the side of democracy, of law and order. We need people to volunteer. We need you to get your friends to volunteer, and everyone needs to get out and vote on November the 5th. That is ultimately when victory will prevail.
They've really galvanized everyone, haven't they? Want to be uplifted? There are millions more Trump voters today than there were yesterday. There are hundreds of thousands, at least. I don't have access to the crosstabs, but hundreds of thousands of new Trump donors. People that are willing to reach into their pocketbook and donate to Trump. You're looking at one of them. I know executive producer ALX is one of them. And you probably are one of them. This is the backlash. This is the backfire. Put him in jail. I dare you. Do it. Do it. Make our day. There's a guy who called this out. I really wish he was here today. His name's Rush Limbaugh. And he called this out a long time ago, like a ring of a bell, when Donald Trump had a rigged and stolen election in 2020 in something that is... They wouldn't be doing this. They wouldn't be doing this if they had a fair election in 2020. Just call it what it is. If the election in 2020 was fair, then they would not see the need to cover up their crimes. But they know that Donald Trump, given a thorough investigation of everything that went on and every law and rule that was broken, just the ones that we know about, that the American people would come to know the truth about what actually happened in 2020. If they had a fair election in 2020, they wouldn't be doing what they're doing today. The actions of the Democrat Party today is the actions of a guilty party that is behaving like guilty people who committed crimes, which they did. As soon as the day that Trump left office, Rush Limbaugh, who was dying, he had cancer, and he was going to pass away quite soon, actually, when this clip was recorded, explained perfectly what Donald Trump means to his supporters. And there's never been a more prescient media clip in the history of the world than this. Listen to the great Rush Limbaugh calling out this moment from years ago, from 4 years ago. Watch.
I know they desperately want Trump gone, and I know that they desperately want it codified, that Trump cannot run again, because make no mistake, they remain scared to death of you, and they remain scared to death of Trump. Trump, 75 million, 80 million votes. And I'm going to tell you, you're not going anywhere. Even if Trump does, you're not. They can't separate you from Trump. And more importantly, they can't separate you from the ideas. They can't separate you from MAGA. They can't separate you from Make America Great Again, which I think remains one of our big campaign strengths going forward. They believe that they can destroy this bond that exists between you and Trump if they somehow make Trump look bad, make Trump look like a reprobate, embarrass you about Trump. They can't do it because you came before Trump.
saw that clip this morning, and I just thought, it's just perfect. It's perfect. It's like Rush Limbaugh in the year 2021, as Trump was leaving office, up here saying that calling exactly what they're about to do to Trump. They're going to call him a reprobate. They're going to charge him criminally with stuff. They're going to try and separate you from Trump. And how did that work out? We are witnessing it today. Limbaugh says you cannot separate MAGA. You cannot destroy MAGA. The ideas, you cannot kill an idea. You, the American people, came before Trump. Donald Trump is your weapon. And we will wield that weapon this coming election cycle. Ladies and gentlemen, there are many questions to be asked about this process and what happens in the future. Let's just say we expect that the debate between Joe Biden and Donald Trump will be the most watched event in American television history. That debate is going to happen, if it happens at all. We hope it does. That debate is going to happen in 3 weeks from now. Hunter Biden's trial kicks off in 1 week from now. So buckle up. Join the Benny Brigade. We have an opportunity to build something really powerful that actually speaks truth in this program. The Benny Brigade, we also have a, ask me anything on Friday. So let's rock and roll. If you join the Benny Brigade, obviously you can ask questions. We're going to open up portals to ask questions for our guests. And we have a bunch of other functionality that we're working on right now. But keeping us independent and secure and safe so that we don't have to like live by the rules of the corporate press or repeat lies that the corporate media makes their people repeat. That is a blessing. And so we thank you, Benny Brigade members. Mitchell Haviland says, do you think President Trump should bring Tara Reade to the debate with the current resident of the White House, like what he did with Bill Clinton's accusers in the debate with Hillary? Yeah, totally. But Tara Reade has been terrorized by the Biden DOJ, and she's now living in Russia. She's fled the nation, and now she lives in Moscow. So I just don't think that Tara Reade would be able to come back to the country, or not do so easily. But I think it'd be genius. Joe Biden is credibly accused of raping Tara Reade and other acts of total degeneracy and evil. Tara Reade was a Joe Biden staffer. And then there's a cover-up, and that cover-up is being done by the University of Delaware that has all of Joe Biden's Senate records, and we haven't been able to see those records because they refuse to open them up to us. So if Joe Biden's innocent, why don't you just let us see the records? Yeah, they should totally do that with Tara Reade. We're in contact with Tara Reade, and she's been on the program before, but again, she doesn't live in this country anymore. So this would be hard, but I agree. Thank you, Mitchell. Penny Purdue says, Benny, if it was offered to you, would you accept being President Trump's next press secretary? Yes, absolutely. I mean, without question, without even batting an eye. I mean, I'd have to bat an eye because that means I'd have to move back to D.C. I don't want to move back to D.C. I like Florida. I'll like Florida a lot more when they start charging the Bidens. But I'd love to sit in that room. I'm staying. I do a standing desk. Okay, I can stand all day. I do this all day. We stood for 8 hours yesterday during a live. The standing desk. I stand there at the podium all day long. Oh, it would just be like shadow boxing. Oh, it'd be amazing. Oh, it'd be so awesome. Excuse me, Benny. Like, Donald Trump's a racist. What do you think about that? Oh, really? Like the time that Donald Trump said you're not black if you don't vote for him? Remember that time? Remember the time that Donald Trump said that that poor kids are just as smart as white kids? Do you remember that time that Donald Trump's son used the N-word and called Asian women yellow? Not my words, Hunter Biden's words. That's what he said. It's in writing. Remember that time that Hunter Biden said he didn't want his white... You remember that time that Donald Trump said that he didn't want his white kids going to school with black kids because that had to create a racial jungle? Exact quote from Joe Biden. Oh, you mean that time that Donald Trump called Barack Obama clean and well-spoken black man. Oh, I'm sorry. Or that time that Donald Trump said he's going to fight a young black kid at the pool because he had too much pomade in his hair. He wanted to kill him. That Donald Trump? That racist Donald Trump? Finally, I could go on. I could go on, but you mean the Donald Trump that like has blamed every problem on his life on racial minorities, as the Bidens have? And we have like a living record of that? Whether it's Hunter Biden getting kicked out of the Navy for crack or Hunter Biden's gun charge. Every single time the Bidens get in trouble, they literally blame a black person or a brown person. Every single time. Finally, remember that time that Donald Trump locked up hundreds of thousands of black men for smoking crack when his son smoked giant crack rock piles the size of Mount St. Helens on camera, yet won't lock up his white son? Oh, I'm sorry. I must have gotten my notes wrong. Jackwagon. Joe Biden did all those things. Have you ever asked me about how racist Joe Biden is? Shut your mouth. That would have been me. That's me as press secretary. Do you want to do it? Let's do it. I'll take that position any day. Any single day. Final thing I would do. What do you think about Donald Trump said something untruthful, or Donald Trump is missing context in what he said? Oh, okay. You from CBS News or MSNBC or whoever? MSNBC, have you apologized for the Russian collusion hoax yet? Here you go. I'm on the website right now. Do I see an apology for the Russian collusion hoax? Have you guys ever apologized for that? Okay, well then shut your mouth. Have you apologized for running a deep state operation that said that Hunter Biden's laptop had all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation? Have you apologized? Here's a good, the cameras of the world are on us right now. We're in the White House press briefing room. Why don't you, Ed O'Keefe for CBS, why don't you take this opportunity, since everyone's watching, to just apologize for lying to us about Hunter Biden's laptop? Go. And then you stand here. Then you just stand there and go like this. You look at your watch. You get some chapstick out. You sip your coffee, and you wait, and you just let the awkward silence stretch out before you, like a beautiful waving field of wheat. That's what you do. That's how you should be a press secretary for Donald Trump. You should call these people on their bullshit. Because nobody ever does. And it's time that we start playing by their rules, right? Isn't that the point of the show? Kristen says, can you do an It's a Wonderful Life meme with Trump and Melania standing at a table at the end of the movie while all their Republicans are supporting Trump at the Stormy trial, filter through to throw to something at the table? Not sure if you can do Mershon tearing up the paperwork, but maybe CNN lawyer. So I'm being told, do we have this? I'm being told we have this meme. So Kristen, if you're watching right now, we are the makers of dreams. We are the fulfillers of dreams on this program. And we have made this meme for you. And so keep sending in your requests, and you can have your memes made as well by our in-house, on-staff meme dream team here at Team Benny. Here we go.
She told some people you were in trouble, and they scattered all over town collecting money. Now, don't push. Merry Christmas. I made the ransom of charge account. I'm saving this money for a divorce if ever I get a husband. Christ is born in Bethlehem. Very great.
Teacher says every time a bell rings, Joe Biden falls down the stairs.
That's right. That's right.
I'm not crying. You're crying. It's like I'm That is so good. That's really funny. Oh, that's a good one. Let's put that one out. That's a good one. Let's tweet that one. Oh man. Every time a bell rings, Joe Biden falls down the stairs. Do you love that? I'm watching the chat. The chat loves it. Oh man. Oh boy. You're gonna love this. This is what the outside of Trump Tower looks like right now. Just a little breaking news for the end of the show. There's Trump. That's the motorcade right there. And it's Trump Tower. I'm not sure that's Trump's official motorcade. They can't roll their windows down. You're not allowed to roll your windows down on Secret Service cars. But this is outside of Trump Tower. That's Rudy Giuliani's son there in the suit, and this is the Trump loyal Trump fans outside of Trump Tower in New York. This is Manhattan, ladies and gentlemen. Amazing. You're part of a powerful movement. You're part of a movement that's growing. You're part of the most powerful political movement in the world. Don't let them take that away from you. And the reason why we're so powerful is because we have truth on our side, and we have the truth on our side. Our verse of the day, Matthew 5:10. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Yeah. Revolutionaries who stand against corrupt, tyrannical, evil systems are always persecuted. Always. Whether you're talking about the prophets of old, whether you're talking about Joan of Arc, Gandhi, or Nelson Mandela. These people are icons, but they were persecuted. We remember them today. We don't remember the evil sycophants and sniveling little worms who attacked them. We despise those people. Ladies and gentlemen, persecution comes with being on the side of justice, the side of truth, for standing up for your beliefs, and righteousness. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Persecution is going to happen, and you should count it all joy. Ladies and gentlemen, we certainly are joyful and filled with a renewed hope in the country. We hope you are too. We're filled with renewed hope because of you and because we care so very much about you. We endeavor on this program. Please subscribe, by the way, if you're watching. Please punch subscribe. We endeavor so very much to deliver to you the news, the good news, to uplift, and also to let you know that you're not alone. That's what they always want to do. They want to separate us and let us make you feel like the anger is just, you're just feeling that anger. You woke up in the morning and that anger you just felt by you alone. And that it's hopeless and that you're hopeless. And that's false. That's not true. This show beats every single corporate media live feed in the country. And we do that pretty much on a daily basis. Executive producer ALX, who tracks these things, can tell you. And that's because we are stronger than them. You're not alone. You're part of the most powerful, fastest growing political movement that the country's ever seen. And that should uplift you. And ladies and gentlemen, to send us off here, if that's not enough, if the show's not enough, we'll give you Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson's Trump ad, unofficial. We hope it becomes official. The pure crystallization of what Trump means to you and to me, and why the America First movement is going nowhere. It's your boy Benny. Let's go win this thing. Vote like your country depends on it, because it does. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you in November. Here we go.
Millions of Americans sincerely love Donald Trump. They love him in spite of everything they've heard. They love him often in spite of himself. They love Donald Trump because no one else loves them. The country they built, the country their ancestors fought for over hundreds of years, has left them to die in their unfashionable little towns, mocked and despised by the sneering half-wits with finance degrees but no actual skills who seem to run everything all of a sudden. Whatever Donald Trump's faults, He is better than the rest of the people in charge. At least he doesn't hate them for their weakness. Donald Trump, in other words, is and has always been a living indictment of the people who run this country. That was true 4 years ago when Trump came out of nowhere to win the presidency, and it's every bit as true right now. Trump rose because they failed. It's as simple as that. If the people in charge had done a halfway decent job with the country they inherited, if they'd cared about anything other than themselves, even for just a moment, Donald Trump would still be hosting Celebrity Apprentice. But they didn't. Instead, they were incompetent and narcissistic and cruel and relentlessly dishonest. They wrecked what they didn't build. They lied about it. They hurt anyone who told the truth about what they were doing. That's true. We watched. America is still a great country, the best in the world, but our ruling class is disgusting. A vote for Trump is a vote against them. That's what's going on in this country.